Okay, Daniel, how have you been? Like,
Not
how's,
so bad. How about yourself?
yeah. How's Canada treating you? Cold?
Yeah, weather's getting colder. Other than that, yeah. Just every once in a while taking a look at the news and yeah, just
Yeah.
not great.
Here in America, every day is a different hell. So, yeah, I think I kind of envy you. So yeah, I guess before we start, let's firstly introduce ourselves a little bit because we may have different audience. So I'll talk to the audience for a minute, okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Hey guys, I finally start collaborating. So isn't this exciting, right? So I want to introduce myself a little bit in case you're new. So I was a political scientist for a little while and taught a couple years after my PhD, but I wasn't productive enough to get a tenure track position. I kind of blame the first Trump presidency for messing up my head and killing my patience for research. Um, so I started doing things like stand-up comedy and R-rated ranting on TikTok. Um, and recently, I feel my mental state improved a little bit, so I started to make some kind of sort of educational content. And today, I'm doing my first long-form collaboration in years. And my friend here, Daniel, is a very informed young man who follows Chinese politics and Taiwanese politics more closely than I do. And also since he's still on Twitter, so he has the misfortune of witnessing a lot of lunatic rhetorics firsthand. So I really want some input from him. Okay, so Daniel, you want to talk a little about yourself?
Yeah, I'm just a concerned citizen. Um, that's kind of
Yeah,
yeah,
who
a
isn't,
simple way
right?
to describe. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
just citizen of the world, really. I mean, I was born and raised in Canada, spent
Mm,
my entire life here, but my parents are from Taiwan, and most of my
mm,
extended family is
mm.
in Taiwan, and so yeah, I'm kind of just keeping an eye on that, and yeah, the next number of
Right.
months and years are going to be more tense because we all know that the PRC or Red China really wants to annex Taiwan and the
Yeah.
Republic of China on Taiwan, the original China, not the People's Republic of China, for those of you who don't know the difference. And so, yeah,
Yeah, we'll
it's
definitely talk about that in a while.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic. And uh, so you do speak Chinese, right?
yeah, Mandarin. It's not fantastic. I mean, so we weren't allowed to speak English to our parents growing up. That was a rule. And I don't
What?
know. I know maybe you want to try that rule yourself with your kids. I don't know, but it it did force us to maintain it, although we didn't really converse much anyways. We didn't really get that much practice.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah,
I can't make my kids speak Chinese. They wouldn't listen to me.
yeah,
I'm a very I have very little authority in front of my kids. Yeah.
yeah, you're a small L liberal. You're very live and let be. So my
Yeah.
parents are very authoritarian, so we didn't have a choice. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like advanced language, like talking about like science or business or politics, that's when it gets harder. Like there's a lot of terminology that I don't know. It's more conversational.
Yeah, but at least I mean you're equipped to follow like news outlets from China and Taiwan. So I think that's gives you a different perspective, I think.
A
Yeah.
bit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still like because I spent my entire life here, like when I see a big text of Chinese, it takes me a while to like go through it. And now that there's Google Translate where you can just scan the whole thing, you can it
Mm.
appeals to people's laziness a little bit. But yeah, I can read some. I'll just say that just to be on the safe side.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, I can read it, but I just don't have the patience these days, especially so many American news is distracting me.
Mm,
Yeah, but today I do want to talk a little about China. Oh, by the way, I don't want to make it like host and guest, format because neither of us is experienced in hosting. So I guess, we're just sort of I ask you what I want to ask and you ask me whatever you want to ask. I think,
Sure. Yeah.
just make it, yeah. So, yeah, so one thing I want to start with is this guy, Hasan Piker. Yeah, I know you can't stand him, me neither, but I mean, he's still famous, right? So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, maybe jealousy is partly why I want to talk about him. But, but I think he's famous, so his ideas is can spread far and wide, and that's something, especially his wrong ideas. So what I heard is that recently he spent 10 days in China, 10 days, not 10 months or 10 weeks, 10 days in China, and he sounded like, he suddenly know a lot about China and started to make a lot of comments. I don't know if you heard about it.
I saw a couple clips here and there. Basically, it was like Tucker Carlson going to Russia and saying, "Hey, look how great Russia is," and
Yeah, 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 sort of like,
maybe we should do what they're doing. And America, oh, we're just so behind and everything, and Russia and Red China is just where it's at.
yeah. And one thing most striking is that a police officer actually took his phone, right? So, but that sounds like super offensive, but he still sort of actively defended the officer and saying that, maybe he thought I was just one of those disrespectful white person or something like that. Yeah, but the thing is, one thing he probably doesn't understand is that if they so because in China the officers treat foreign tourists much better than they treat the locals. I don't know if you heard about it,
Hmm.
but it's like a unwritten rule. Everyone knows that because partly because they don't want diplomatic trouble, and partly because they can't control foreign coverage, right? They can control domestic coverage, but foreign coverage is so. Actually, I'm a little surprised that the police would take the phone from a tourist. Yeah, so, but the fact that he was defending it is pretty striking to me. And
Yeah, I mean, I think his shtick is basically trying to downplay and whitewash other countries, especially countries that are adversarial to sort of the democratic coalition and especially the US. And I don't know if you saw my conversation with Han Yang. Did you see any bit of that?
yeah, yeah, a little bit, but I didn't have a chance to watch the whole thing. Yeah,
That's okay. Yeah. Basically,
uh,
we kind of touch upon this too, where you there are legitimate criticisms of the U.S., right? They, being, the widest reaching military in the world, and
mm.
both in terms of military and their intelligence agencies, all of that. Like there's gonna be a lot in its track record that you and I would criticize, like the Iraq War or any number of things, right? But there's some people who have taken that and extended that to thinking the US is the prime villain in the world, and we were lied to by the US government about Iraq, and so maybe the alternative narrative is the truth. And so I think Hassan Piker's shtick is basically, to put it simply, yeah, basically saying like, oh, like Red China's not that bad, Russia's not that bad. We're being lied to, and their narrative is actually the truth. So
Yeah. So like based on what you see from these people, like what do you think is like the cognitive or psychological reason for them to think that way? Because I mean, the alternative, yeah, they want an alternative to the U.S. system. But the thing is, alternatives are all over the place. Like China and Russia have very different system, and Saudi Arabia or Venezuela, they all have very different systems. So what do you mean by alternative? Like which alternative? And there's nothing. So what do you think like they ultimately want? What do you think they ultimately want the U.S. to look like?
I don't even necessarily think that it's, well, they obviously, so there's different groups, right? You have like what we call the tankies, and then you have the small L libertarians, right? They obviously are very different for when it comes to domestic politics in terms of what they want domestically.
Mhm.
But one thing that they have in common is when it comes to foreign policy, they they often think that the alternative narrative, whether it's Russia or Red China, they think that, oh, that's the truth because we've been lied to by our own government in the past, the US government. Uh, the alternative narrative is the narrative that the US government doesn't want you to hear because it's the truth. And it's the US government that is up to no good. And I can like you might think because there's the caricature of the American that's always like USA, USA, USA is number
Mhm.
one. And people abroad think that that kind of person is really annoying. And so these people, they kind of, I think they take a bit of pride into saying, hey, look at me. I'm not one of those people. I don't just believe the
Yeah.
US narrative. I'm unique. I'm smarter. I'm what we used to call woke, but no, now it's more I'm based. Right? Like I know the truth, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
their compass is really just whatever the narrative of the adversary of the US, that's the truth.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so,
sounding
yeah,
sounding edgy is definitely one of the incentives. But the thing is, if everyone sounds like that way, is it still edgy? Because these days there's so many people sounds like that.
yeah,
So it's not
they would
even
claim
edgy
that
anymore. Like it's like a mainstream now.
they would claim that they're the minority and that, the US is so this big powerful thing. And so the narrative that they're pushing is the minority. They're the alternative narrative that the US government doesn't want you to hear. And so I think it's less about, oh, them thinking that their system is like objectively better. It's more just about, um, look at me, like I'm opposing the U.S. government, and I'm offering quote unquote the truth because it's the alternative narrative to the U.S. Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, it just sounds really logically confusing to me because I mean, if you say the alternative is truth, but there are so many alternatives. Like Russia and China was almost in a war at some moment, right? So there were literally like nuclear threats against each other at some point, and Mao and Khrushchev stopped talking at some point. They hated each other so much, and China and the Soviet Union didn't have diplomatic relationship for quite a while. And China had a war with Vietnam, and Vietnam had a war with Cambodia, and all these things. Like how can you think the alternative is the truth because there are so many alternatives, right? So yeah, it's comparatively like you know uh, among the Western countries, at least I mean, they still have conflict, but normally they don't fight each other, right? So it's hard to say since Trump, but at least before Trump, there was no sign of them, having like military conflict against each other. So yeah, that's one thing I feel like people really need to think about. You can't just say the alternative, like what alternative? China and Russia seem to be close right now, but not really. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, when something triggers, when some triggers happens, and it's really hard to say what will happen. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think so. All of these nuances that you're talking about, they're obviously not taking that into consideration, right? So I think the true north for them, their compass, is the narrative that directly opposes the US, that
Hmm.
is that
Yeah.
is the truth. Because they
Yeah.
again like they think they're they've sort of wisened up to the US saying that, oh, like if if I believe the US stance or narrative, I'm a schmuck or I'm a sheep or a lamb. I can't remember what they use. They're you're being fooled by the US government essentially. And so it's less about these facts that you're talking about and more about, I take pride in not believing the US government. And in some, I think for both you and me, we would say all governments are not beyond reproach. We should apply the same standard. There are times when the U.S. is wrong, right? But what these people do is the U.S. is always wrong. They're always the prime villain, and we're being lied to. Whatever narrative that they espouse is a lie, and the narrative that is directly opposing it is the hidden truth that the powers that be in the U.S. don't want you to know about.
Yeah, yeah, that's so funny thing is when Hasan Piker went to China, he said he wanted to find out what the US can learn from China, right? He had sort of a mission statement or something. But then later I forgot if someone asked him or he just said it himself, but he didn't really, after he came back, he didn't really say what exactly, the U.S. can learn from China. He said something about like high speed railway or something. I mean, that's just a one specific policy. I mean, you want the U.S. to build more high speed railway? Is that what what you're complaining all this time? Like, what exactly? What policy exactly, or what institutions exactly you want to copy from China? Because yeah, that just sounds you just say, okay, this is a good place. I see this kind of TikTok videos all the time. You just say, go to a place in China and say, look how good it is, look how clean and how, you know, like how low the prices are. Like, but what policy exactly do you want to learn from? Right? The prices are low. You can't really copy the prices, right? Because prices are partly caused by cheap labor. I see you can order a takeout for a few dollars. Yeah, of course, because those people they ride a bicycle like on the highway and and do those really like sort of you know, like like movie special effect kind of a moves to deliver you things, and then they charge only a couple of dollars. That's because the laborers are so cheap. So of course, the price is low. So yeah, so it's not something you can copy. Like I feel a lot of people, just sort of confuse the observations with uh, what should I say, with the cost, right? So they think this is the cost because they have a good life because they have low prices, but really, what
Yeah, so
costs
that
low
comes with
prices?
low wages.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah. So I feel like yes, and also he was there for only 10 days. That's kind of because 10 days, honestly, it's like if someone traveled to the United States for 10 days, I'm sure most of them would have a good time, right? So even though it's really for us who live here, it's like living hell right now. But for travelers, it's still a nice experience, right? They can watch that. They can go to the, I don't know, the
You've
women
you've
liberty.
been and I mean you were born and raised in mainland China. You've been there for like at least 20 something years. So what given that experience that you have
Mm.
that he doesn't, can you talk a little bit about like what it was like growing up and what given that you actually you were born
Yeah.
and raised there, you lived there for over 20 years, like so what would you if you had a moment to teach, if you teach Hassan Piker, like what would you tell him?
Yeah, normally I'm cautious about saying that because China had a lot of changes since I left. I heard the pollution became better because pollution was used to be like really bad, like the air pollution per se, right? So I mean, you look up the sky and it's all gray, and I heard it's getting better. So I normally I'm a little cautious about to say what invoking my own experience. But I think there are things definitely didn't change or even get worse. I think the most
Such as
important thing is freedom of speech because you can't really say anything you want to say. It's the social media is so tightly controlled, right? So even after I came to the US, when I posted something on Weibo or Chinese social media, it just won't survive. It's really annoying, right? So, you try to be entertaining and you accumulated maybe a few thousand followers, and then all of a sudden you don't even know what you said and sort of anger someone and your account disappeared. So maybe it's not a big deal for most people, but for me it's a big deal because I
yeah, I mean if you
like
were born
talking.
and raised in that, then I guess like that's all you've ever known. Like I'm talking about the younger generation. If
Hmm.
you were born and raised there now and that's all you've ever known, then I guess that's sort of a normal. But for you, I mean,
Yep.
internet, social
But
media,
but
I guess.
I don't think they are happy too. I mean,
Mm,
they keep looking for materials to watch. They keep trying those VPN internet ladders to find materials from other countries. They know they know life is boring there. So it's I had a video about how the people are still listening to pop music from 10 years ago, 20 years ago from Hong Kong and Taiwan because it's just the artistic creation is very constrained. You can't really like even things like hip hop these days they exist, but it's just imagining like if you translate American hip hops into Chinese like it's not gonna work, right? It's definitely gonna be banned. Right?
mm.
So but the thing is if you write things that are super mild for an artist, if they can only write things that are mild, they can't really
Truly
they
express
won't feel,
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, they won't feel the inspiration, they won't feel the satisfaction from writing, so they just end up not writing, right? So after a while it's just the media content is very you know and it's just very boring. And also I one of the reasons I couldn't teach my children Chinese is that I can't find interesting Chinese content for them to watch. So sometimes I was thinking, if they were born in China, like how would I be able to teach them interesting stuff? And my English would be really bad, of course. And also we couldn't find interesting Chinese content for them to watch. And how are they gonna learn to become interesting people? I don't know. I mean, maybe people still will find a way, but right now
There's
I think
materials.
my kids are.
There's materials from Taiwan. You just have to find it, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
there's.
yeah, yeah. But strange enough, it's kind of hard to search for Taiwanese content. Partly because the Taiwanese Chinese still a little different from mainland Chinese because the vocabulary is still I can totally understand what Taiwanese people say, but if I want to talk like Taiwanese people, it's still hard. So that's why when you put some keywords in Google, normally they will give us mainland content, right?
Oh,
It's kind of hard
okay.
because I don't know how to sound like Taiwanese. If you sound like mainland Chinese, they will give you mainland content, right?
Right, right,
Yeah, and
right.
mainland content is so dominant, so it's even I can use some software to to sort of convert the simplified into traditional Chinese. That's not hard. But the thing is, I still sound like mainland.
Right,
So
the
so the Google
terminology
will,
that you use. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I can search for some Taiwanese movies, but the thing is, I feel like even Taiwanese content are sort of affected by the Chinese market. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, yeah. So there used to be so many like really good Taiwanese singers. I remember when I was a kid, right? And now
Like
it's
who? Like who do you remember growing up listening to? Or
uh I remember listening to wait, I can't think of any specific anyone specific right now. I would say wait, who do you remember? I can't think of any.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's so
like
many years.
uh,
It's been so many
I
years.
mean, yeah, it depends on what decade you're referring to, but I guess well, I grew up with like Jay Chou and like Wang Lihong, and
Oh
you
yeah,
know
yeah,
those
yeah.
guys.
Yeah, Wang Lihong is pretty good. He was a little after my
After your time a
childhood,
little
but
bit, yeah.
yeah, but he's pretty good. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Qi Qin, you know Qi Qin?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Qi Qin. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not as familiar with him, but I know of him. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Zhao Chuan. Have you heard of Zhao Chuan?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, yeah,
If I see, yeah, if I Google, I'll probably know. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just because they need the mainland market is so much bigger, right? So if they can write a song that can pass the mainland censorship, it's way more profitable than just writing for the Taiwanese audience. So I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's kind of hard, right? So because back then in the 80s, Chinese market was still not very developed, so they still write for their local, they still wrote for their local markets. But today they don't do that anymore, right? So it's
Are you talking
yeah,
about are you talking about Taiwan or mainland
yeah,
China?
yeah, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, because in the 80s they still mostly wrote for their local markets, right?
Right.
Their movies and their songs, their TV, they're still made for their local markets, right? Because
Yeah.
yeah, the China's
Yeah,
market wasn't even open.
there's a lot of self-censorship. There was a little project that were in Taiwan a couple of years ago. They were trying to make their version of like House of Cards, but like about Taiwanese history, Taiwanese politics. And there was sort of like a Q&A, and they were talking about how for many, many years this wouldn't ever get made because people would be afraid to touch these subjects for
Mhm.
fear of, you would never be able to sell it to mainland China, of course, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
you wouldn't be able to make your money back. You would lose money, right? And so they were taking a chance on that. So yeah, there's a lot of self-censorship. And even like Taiwanese celebrities too. Like they're afraid to
yeah,
speak out because they'll lose out on a lot of money.
yeah. I think 10 years ago there was this really good Taiwanese movie. I forgot the name. So it's about like there was a love letter from a Japanese colonizer like to a Taiwanese woman, and then later they found that letter. One of the post office worker found that letter. I don't know if and it's many years later, like in the present day, they found that letter, and there were some stories around it. Do you
Oh, that
remember that?
sounds interesting. I'm gonna have to Google this. It sounds
Yeah, yeah.
interesting.
I forgot the name. It won a lot of prizes and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember one of my friends watching that movie. They were like, "Why are they romanticizing like Japanese colonizers?"
Mm.
So I'm like, it's a movie, right? It's romantic and it's funny and it's a good movie. Why do you care about like what?
I'm curious, given your academic background, because if a mainland Chinese person asks that question, right? And I obviously know where they're coming from. They're thinking of like the Nanjing massacre and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think maybe like some South Koreans can be wondering the same thing about Taiwan and Taiwanese people, where like, why are you guys so friendly with Japan? Like, well, don't you remember the history? Some people in Taiwan will say that the KMT, the Chinese nationalists who came and took over Taiwan after the
Mhm.
Japanese left, they say that their rule was worse or much worse than the Japanese rule. And
Yeah, that's
certainly,
actually not wrong in a way, right? Yeah,
yeah,
it's not entirely wrong, yeah, because yeah, yeah, like the what's that event called?
the 228
Yeah, yeah,
incident
228, yeah, yeah,
massacre. Yeah,
228, yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's in a way it's because they want to change the language to like they want to sort of put only Chinese speakers in because back then most of the elites spoke Japanese, right? So they had to you know kick them out of the government and basically switch the entire native language of the island. That's a big project, so I can't
yeah,
imagine how they did it. So it must have been a very authoritarian in a way.
yeah.
So yeah. And of course, for me, it's even more ridiculous to think that way because there are so many things happen after World War II in China, and there are things that are even worse than the Japanese invasion, right? Especially Great Leap Forward. So the thing is, I mean, of course, the Japanese war crimes were still a big thing, right? It was still something worth remembering. But the thing is, why are you focusing on that one thing? It doesn't make sense, right? So the only reason that you focus on that one thing it's because you were told to focus on that, right? So and
But
yeah,
you were also born and raised in mainland China, so why don't you think like that?
I mean I think there are few reasons. Partly, my dad was a historian. Is a historian. No, he's still alive. Sorry, I used
Okay,
the
good.
wrong tense. Yeah, yeah, he's a historian, but he's not. He's retired. He's not doing research anymore. So, so yeah, so he liked to talk about these stories and about Cultural Revolution, Great Leap Forward. I mean, yeah, yeah, he's also because most people don't talk about this with their kids, but yeah, yeah, my dad was a relatively surprisingly liberal person, right? So yeah, he talked about these things, and of course also I'm also kind of a social science minded person. I like to read up all these materials and some literature about Cultural Revolution, some novels or some things like that. So I see how humans can how bad humans can turn into given certain circumstances. Right? That's true for Chinese. That's true for Japanese. That's true for any nation. Right? So it's not it's not like just because they are from another nation they're necessarily worse. Like it's just it's just human nature. So we so if you want to have a better life, you want to figure out an institution that can discourage that kind of human instinct, right? So you want to find a way to uh, to restrain that kind of impulses, but it's not like okay, this nation is worse than this nation. That doesn't make sense. And
Mhm.
so how can it possibly worse? Like the DNA of humans and apes are only like I don't know 1%, 2% different, right? So imagine the DNA between Chinese and Japanese is basically indistinguishable. I don't think it's distinguishable. Maybe there are some very tiny differences. Like I'm sure biologists can have some way to tell if this DNA is from China or from Japan. Maybe they have a way to tell, but in terms how
As a
people
person.
behave
Yeah.
in terms of outcome, the difference is truly minimal, right? So there's yeah, so so if you're still hating on Japan after 90 years, 80 years, I just it just really it's not very rational, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, the PRC, Red China, they want their citizens to feel more animosity towards an
Hmm.
outside country, whether it's the US or Japan, as opposed to focusing their frustrations against the authorities, against themselves, so that they can say, well, you shouldn't be angry at us, you should be angry at them, so that they can
Hmm.
sort of shift criticism away from themselves.
Yeah, I guess especially countries that are more successful or more attractive in a way. So because you don't want them to become your role model, right? Become the role model of your citizens, right? So you have to. I don't think. I mean, theoretically, like Mongolia used to rule China, but you have never heard any anti-Mongolia rhetoric in China, right? So there are a lot of histories, right, between Mongolia and Han Chinese, right? So
Mm.
there of course there are also a lot of history between Russia and China. Russia actually took a lot of Chinese territories in the 19th century, right? A lot of them, right? So probably more than any other countries did. So yeah, so the rhetoric, so which anime they want you to have is really, I think mostly because they
The
choose
current, yeah.
animes based on how successful they are and also how democratic they are. I think that's probably the case.
So did you mean that that's your metric for how successful a country is?
Uh, no, no, not no. I mean, how successful? I'm talking about the the normal metrics like GDP per capita, like
Oh, right.
the standard of living, right? When a country has standard of living, then people will naturally think, should we adopt their system or should we, copy the Taiwanese system or Japanese system? And people start thinking about these things, right? So, but obviously they have to stop people from thinking that way. So they have to portray them as enemies. So no one would think, oh, should we adopt a Russian system or Mongolian system, right? So they don't worry about Russia or Mongolia. They worry about systems that people might feel, you know, jealous about.
I think it's
Yeah.
also about the current geopolitical interests too, right? So because the PRC is kind of allied with Russia right now, so there's no
Mm-hmm.
need to get
Mm-hmm.
um, there's no need to get your own citizens, the mainland
Yeah,
Chinese,
yeah,
to be angry at Russia,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because they're also they're using the Ukraine conflict in a way of saying it's the U.S. provocation that caused this war, and they want
Mm-hmm.
to get their own populace to get used to that kind of thinking, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if the PRC one day decides to take action against Taiwan, they've already rehearsed this sort of rhetoric and narrative that they
Mm-hmm.
keep broadcasting in mainland China. It's the US that provoked it. It's not Russia. It's not
Mm-hmm.
Russia's fault that they decided to launch an invasion. It's not our fault that we decided to launch an invasion. It's the West and the US that's provoking it. And it's always that's sort of the standard sort of narrative. And when it comes to Japan, it's you can see it happening right now too, where it's been long known that by all the analysts and scholars and academics that if there was a war in this region, that it's very likely that Japan would get involved in one way or another. And so the recent prime minister just kind of
Yeah,
said it out loud, and then now we see the PRC saying, "Oh, it's the Japanese that are at fault. They're the one that are provoking war." And so I think, yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
very much also has to do with the current geopolitical interest as well.
Yeah, yeah. Now there are a lot of like I think they are canceling each other's artists from performances and things like yeah, it's a mess.
Oh God,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
saw that they're gonna what was it? They're gonna ban seafood from Japan. I think that was
That
like
I don't
whatever.
think that's possible. But there is a singer called Ning Ning. She's one of the K-pop. She's in one of the K-pop groups, but she's Chinese. And she a few years ago she posted Instagram showing a lamp shaped like the atomic bomb, like the mushroom lamp, like
Mm.
shaped exactly like when the atomic
The
bomb
cloud.
exploded. Yeah, yeah, the cloud. Yeah, so yeah, that was so that m because she was slotted to perform in one of the important venues, I think at the end of the year. But now they're considering pulling her. I don't know. Yeah, so it's yeah,
This
that's
is uh this is in Japan. Like she was supposed to perform in Japan, and
yeah, yeah,
now
performing in Japan. Yeah, yeah. But I'm not sure. Maybe they'll let it go because after all, Japan is still a sort of open society. Maybe they'll. But but I kind of feel it's a very bad taste to have a lamp like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that group, but the thing is, it's aespa, it's a K-pop group, but I feel like it's really bad taste. Why you want
yeah.
to celebrate like atomic bomb like that? So yeah. Anyway, and of course, China is already canceling a lot of Japanese performances. Yeah, I saw it
Mm.
in the news. Yeah, it's just straight out just cancel. Didn't say the reason. Just it's canceled. Yeah. Oh yeah, I think it's 40 minutes. So yeah, there's one thing I want to talk about because one of the reasons I thought of you was because I saw this video of you talking about the relationship between China and Taiwan because Hasan Piker said something like because Taiwan is a breakaway province, right? So China sort of is entitled to take it back whenever it wants, right? So he said something like that, right? Because it's a breakaway. They're like and you said in the video something like I think you said something like actually the mainland was a breakaway, right? Is that what you said? I don't.
So the video that I was reacting to was him saying that he was comparing the Chinese Civil War with the American Civil War, and
Mm-hmm.
basically saying because the Union won the American Civil War, his analogy, his comparison is that the communists were the Union and the KMT were the Confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just saying, well, that doesn't really track because the Union was the original country, the ROC
Yeah,
was the original
yeah.
country, the Confederacy seceded, the communists seceded from the original, and they declared their independence and they wrote up their own constitution. They had a different flag. They wanted a new country, just like the Confederates. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was just basically explaining just the only similarity that they're drawing is the Union won, the communists won, and that's why they're analogous. And so I was just explaining why it's kind of the opposite. Um, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
would, yeah,
it's just really annoying. Like these people who know nothing about the history and just draw this kind of parallels. And also, even though they both won, they won in different ways, right? The Union won the whole country, right? The Union, if the Confederacy, if the Union failed to conquer the Confederacy part of the country, then they will probably stay independent, right? But the Union won the whole country, right? So it's like the communists won, but they failed to conquer Taiwan, right? So they failed to cross the strait. You can't claim it, right? So just because they won most of the territory, so they deserve all the territories. Yeah, so
yeah.
that's yeah, that's kind of
And
a
it's also, I mean, even within Taiwan, there's 23, 24 million people. There's obviously it's very much like America, how politically divided it can be. And so for people that know a little bit about the Taiwanese domestic politics, they know kind of like in the US where there's two parties that have only been in power. In Taiwan, it's also the two parties that have only been in power is the KMT and the DPP. And so even within Taiwan, there's some people that will say that um, Taiwan was uh, they would reject that well, because when we're talking about the Union completely conquering the country, there's a line of thinking in Taiwan that says, well, Taiwan never really was and never really should be considered a part of a conceptual China. Um, so they'll say things like, even during the Qing dynasty, the Qing administered a fraction of Taiwan, but the Qing dynasty were
yeah,
didn't even completely conquer Taiwan as well. They administered, I think, 40% of Taiwan. And then there were a lot of rebellions from even the Han people in Taiwan against the Qing dynasty. I think, yeah, they had a
yeah,
phrase
yeah,
that was something like, I can't remember the Chinese phrase, but it was something like every year of rebellion, every 10 years of revolution, or something like that. And
yeah,
then they'll say it was the Japanese that were the first foreign country to fully conquer
mhm,
Taiwan. And so these are people that are generally either people whose families have been in Taiwan for generations, even before the Japanese came to Taiwan, where they don't want anything to do with any China, whether it's the Qing Dynasty or the Republic of China or the People's Republic of China. They just want to be sort of left alone. But then
yeah. I mean,
there's
talking about sovereignty in Qing Dynasty is really laughable because in Qing Dynasty, even Han Chinese was like second class citizen, right? So
yeah,
it was a Manchurian government, right? So it's of course these days Manchurians and Han Chinese basically they are indistinguishable because it's all mixed up. But back then it was not like even Chinese were second hand like second class citizen, right? So what's the point of talking about sovereignty? Like what belongs to? There was no elections, there were no self determination or anything like that. So and since Taiwan was ceded to Japan in 18 I think
1895.
1840
Yeah,
1895, yeah, yeah, 1895. And since then, mainland and Taiwan shared the same government for only 3 years, right? So there were only 3 years right after World War II. They shared the same national government. So that's in the last 130 years, right? They only shared the same government for 3 years.
yeah,
Like on what basis can you claim they are the same country? It's kind of yeah,
yeah. And
yeah,
even the during the Qing Dynasty, like I said, so the Qing Dynasty never fully conquered Taiwan as well. It
mhm.
administered a fraction of Taiwan, and even the Han people in Taiwan directly rebelled against the Qing Dynasty. And you also don't hear the Manchurian people today talking about we need to reclaim Taiwan, right? And also, like even before the Qing Dynasty, for most of human history, Han people in China never really. they didn't even know about Taiwan. They only discovered Taiwan
Yeah,
later. It was always the
yeah,
sort of Austronesian people who were the ancestors of the Polynesian people who have been in Taiwan the longest.
yeah, yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
kind of like America now, they're, I think, less than 3% of the population, I think. So that's a little sad, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, yeah, but what I want to say is that regardless of these, legal justifications or historical justifications, but personally, according to my value system, I think they none of these matters because they don't want to come back to China. If they don't want to, it doesn't matter what history says, right? It's a In a way you can argue America is a breakaway province from the British Kingdom, right?
UK,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So they speak English. Some people say, oh, East people in East Ukraine
Eastern
in
Ukraine, yeah.
Donbass speak Russian. Like what? Yeah, they voted to become independent from Russia, right? So yeah, so it's like America wanted to become independent from Britain. It doesn't matter what language they speak, and it doesn't matter what historical documents there were. The thing is, they don't want to. It's like if your girlfriend or boyfriend left you, you can't just force them to come back. It doesn't matter what historical contracts you have. You can if you have a prenup, right? You can sue them for money, maybe that's possible. But you can't force them to come back to you. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you force two people, let alone two nations, you force two people to live together, it will be a disaster, right? You force two
Yeah.
nations, and they, yeah. So yeah, I don't know but personally, I don't think a lot of Chinese care about Taiwan as much as they say they care about it. Yeah, because sometimes it's like the political correctness in China. I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you say, "Oh, I don't care about Taiwanese independence," that will sound,
Offensive,
very,
yeah.
yeah, sound kind of dangerous. There may be
I'd be like,
peer
hey,
pressure.
that's the national interest, and how dare you speak against the national interest? Speaking from someone who was born and raised, well, first of all, like, so when you were growing up in the when we and going to school, what did they tell you about Taiwan when you were growing up in school?
Yeah, they just told me basically exactly what Hasan Piker was saying. It's basically
Yeah,
basically the same line of reasoning, right? So Taiwan broke away from China, and it's still part of China, and we should one day we will unify. We will we will
take
have
it
this
back. Yeah,
great national unification, and bring them back to the you know to the motherland or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we've been learning. But yeah, some kids maybe like really get really excited about this, but I think most people, I don't think they think too much about it. Yeah, I don't think.
Interesting.
Yeah, most people really care. Like independent. Okay, so what? So it doesn't really affect their life in the least bit, right? Maybe it's even better, really, because if it's independent country, it can have a normal visa process. Maybe it's easier to travel there, and maybe it's easier for foreign trade for their investment to travel across the border. Right now, everything has this special arrangement, and everything is it's additional administrative burden, really, right? So you
What is
can
an additional administrative burden?
like you have a special kind of sort of a passport designed for traveling to Taiwan. I think it's called I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, but it's different from applying for visa to another country, right?
Yeah,
Traveling to Taiwan is a different procedure from traveling to another country,
yeah.
right? And I'm sure if you want to make an investment there, it's also hard. And you want to you know uh things like, I don't know, yeah, I don't know for sure, but the thing is, they're still technically enemies, right? So if it's an independent country, then you can easily make friends with them, right? It's totally fine to have a normal diplomatic relationship, to have ambassadors, to have a normal relationship with them, and I think it makes things easier. Right now, you can't, right? There's no mainland ambassador in China, in Taiwan, right? There is no Taiwanese ambassador in Beijing. So things must be. I imagine things must be hard. I never really did any research, but I imagine things must be hard.
So I guess yeah, a couple questions here. So when somebody asks why I think the PRC wants to take Taiwan, there's like a number of reasons, right? There's strategic reasons and there's political and ideological reasons. I think one of the big ones was is being able to say that we've completely successfully ended the Chinese Civil War, where we completely defeated the ROC, and so we can claim, this glory of victory. Um, and then of
Yeah,
course
but
there's,
but
yeah,
yeah, yeah, but
go
no one
ahead.
is blaming them for not finishing it. No one is like protesting why haven't we unified Taiwan? Like no one is pressuring them, right? So it's feel
Hmm.
like yeah,
Do
I
you
don't
think
know.
that so? Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. So, like, what do you think is the prime motivation for the PRC to want to take Taiwan?
Yeah, so yeah, this kind of question is always hard to answer. I don't even honestly, I don't even know exactly why Putin invaded Ukraine. Like there are a lot of different theories, right? So one is a domestic politics theory, right? Maybe he wanted some achievement in case other people try to overthrow him, right? So that's in China maybe there is also domestic. I I heard like before the 20th Party Congress there was a lot of struggle. I don't know if you heard about the Central Military Commission, the purge in the Central Military Commission. Yeah, so
There's been
at
a lot
first,
of purges. Yeah.
yeah, in the Hu administration there were 12 member of Central Military Commission, and the Xi reduced it to seven. And after reducing it to seven, three of them got purged and never replaced. So now there are only four. And the three purged ones were all appointed by Xi himself. So it's really a strange situation, right? So basically, you only have four people determining the entire military affairs of such a big country. And so some people even speculated that maybe Xi himself was in danger, but it turns out he wasn't, right? He survived the whatever behind the door struggles, and he's still the top guy in the country. But
So, yeah. So, do you think the three that he purged, it was mainly about self-preservation, right? Maybe they disagreed about something and oh, it's time for you to go, sort of thing. Or what do you think?
I really don't know because these things are highly secretive. They are very good at control leaking. It's not like the Trump administration. So it not nothing. Yeah, not we don't know why those people are purged. Of course, the official story is always corruption, but corruption, come on, like
Yeah.
yeah, everyone was corrupt, and if they took some briberies, a few million yuan bribery, it's really nothing compared to what they compared to their these high level officials. They have extremely good welfare, they have extremely good
Salary.
residence and medical care, and it's really nothing, right? Some little bit more cash was nothing to them. So I
Mm,
don't really, I can't really tell. So maybe she was frustrated with them. Maybe he thinks they are not competent enough, or
mm.
maybe someone try to get rid of them in order to get C. That's also possible, right? Someone sort of uh, looked for their problems and use their corruption to pressure C. That's also a theory, but it's impossible to verify, right? Because
Mm.
yeah, they never all their meetings are behind closed doors. So yeah, they don't even make public speeches. They don't have any interviews or any live streaming, nothing, right? So yeah, it's I don't even know what his personality is like. There's no way to find out.
Yeah, there's a very little videos of him. I think I've seen like a couple of him speaking personally, but yeah, it's not
Yeah.
it's nothing compared to the amount of videos we see of Trump. It's like night and day.
Yeah, Putin has more speeches, but still, we don't really know what Putin is thinking because
Mm.
you know he's of course he's a KGB, so he's good at acting maybe. So he's
Mm,
but we don't really know what his personality is like, right? If he opens up to you in a bar, I don't really know what he would say because he's just always this poker face, right? You don't really know what's going on.
mm,
So like I think if China invades Taiwan, it's probably the similar reason as why Putin invade Ukraine, but still, why did Putin invade Ukraine? It's for resources or for, maybe he's worried that Ukraine became too rich after integrating with Europe, and if it became too rich, it will serve as a role model for Russian citizens, right? That's a theory, right? So
mm.
yeah, you see, okay, look at how well they're doing, right? Maybe we should do that too. Maybe we should try to democratize too. So that's maybe one reason, but in Taiwan's case, Taiwan is already rich and Taiwan is already democratic. So I don't know. So and there's no land border, so I don't know if that motivation applies. But yeah, I mean, if I were him, I certainly wouldn't do that. I would think of something else to sort of prove my competence. But yeah, but who knows?
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was talking with Han Yang about before, one thing that kind of surprised me was he he estimated that amongst the Chinese diaspora, so like any Chinese like, that are living outside of mainland China, and like in the U.S. or Australia or Canada, he he was sort of roughly estimating that it was the ratio between uh, the Chinese diaspora that support the PRC versus the Chinese diaspora that oppose the PRC is kind of 50-50. And I was kind of surprised to hear that because I always thought that the like mainland Chinese people that have moved abroad, that maybe it's not that they necessarily like really support the PRC government or anything, but they certainly wouldn't publicly criticize it. So it was always my impression that people like you and people like him are very much in the minority. But what's your sense
Uh,
of it?
Well, I mean, yes, they are relatively well-off people, right? It's very hard for someone from a really poor, rural area to come out to another country, right? So more normally, so economically, they are normally like upper middle class, back in China. So of course they are more likely to support the regime in that sense. But on the other hand, the fact that they came out probably because they didn't want to stay, right? That's also one of the reason I
But you
think.
said that somebody that is upper middle class, that's some person well off in domestic terms, would be likely to support the government. Why is that?
Well, they economically benefited. Firstly, they may have benefited economically from their social class, from their I don't know, their government connections. Maybe that's
Mm.
one. But also, it's also possible that they have more to lose, right? They don't want to say something. They think if let's say if China is undergoing some kind of regime change, then they may have more to lose. Their family members in China or something like, because in China most people more or less have some, like most middle upper class more or less have some government connections, right? Because you can't really do anything without, even though it's not direct, at least indirect, it's really hard to do anything without any kind of government connections, right? So
And
so it's
how are you defining upper middle class here?
uh I don't know. It just I would say uh maybe annual income at top 20%, something like that.
Okay.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, another theory could be like they're doing okay, so maybe they
Mm.
think, oh, the government's not bad because I'm doing okay, so
Yeah, yeah,
maybe.
yeah, yeah. It totally can be a sampling bias, right? Because they make the judgment based on their experience. That's totally possible. Yeah.
So amongst
But
the diaspora, like mainland
mhm.
Chinese people that are living in Canada, US, Australia, what do you think is the ratio between those that support the PRC
Uh,
versus those that don't?
Firstly, I don't really hang out with them. I mean, I don't really hang out with anyone. I mean, I'm a pretty, I like to talk online, but I'm actually pretty introvert person. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't really go to parties or go to dinners or anything. So I don't, honestly, I don't really know. But I think half half is, at least based on my online experience, I think half half is sort of a right estimate, because
Hmm.
there there's income factor, but there's also value factor, because those who come out tend to be those who want to come out, right? So there may be some value. They may have some pro West value.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's
and
interesting.
also a lot of people came out during Tiananmen, right? Those people are definitely anti-PRC, right? So
Hmm.
there was a lot of people like came out in that period. So that's they literally ran away. So that's
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
but the funny thing
yeah,
is
go
like
ahead.
almost 80-90% of the overseas Chinese are pro-Trump. That's something really
Is that?
really
Oh,
weird. Yeah, I think at least from people I bump into, but I don't know.
hmm.
It's most of them don't really vote anyway, right? So first generation or they speak very bad English. I think I mean
So why
among
do you
these.
think these people are very pro-Trump?
Yeah, that's something a lot of people were puzzled about, and there are some people, there are even some research papers, right? I know someone even read like some journal research papers on that topic. Why these overseas Chinese are so pro-Trump? I honestly I don't know which reason exactly is the most important, but there may be cultural reasons. They are culturally conservative. Maybe
Hmm.
they are anti-LGBT, or maybe they are, I don't know, maybe they are kind of racist. I don't know. They have they yeah. So yeah, it's all possible, right? So yeah, because they grew up in a single racial environment, like one racial environment. So when they bump into different races, they tend to have a hard time digesting it. Like they tend to think, oh, this guy is from whatever strange place, so they must have something. That's honestly kind of understandable, right? So it's like
I feel like, yeah, go ahead.
you go to another planet, right? You bump into a bunch of aliens, right? So you if you've never seen one, of course you feel like more, uh, yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm not
think,
saying different races are different are aliens.
yeah, no,
That's
of
not
course, yeah.
a correct thing to say. But I
Um,
mean,
yeah.
but yeah, you see what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah, I think it tends to be older people too, like the older generation too. I think the younger you
yeah.
are, it's probably less. They're
Yeah,
less probably less.
I think for second generations ABC, they are I think they are still mostly Democratic. I think,
Yeah.
at least 60-70% based on the surveys, I think. Yeah, or Asians in general, right? Asian Americans in general. Like if they're born here, I think they're still, yeah, 60-70% Democratic.
However, there are
Yeah.
also second generation Chinese that, let's say, they're born and raised in a Western country. I have found that there are also a number of them that are they may either know less about the PRC, and because it's very normalized in the West to
Mhm.
criticize your own government, and that, oh,
Mhm.
European colonialism was very bad, and so therefore the West is sort of pretty bad, and so there is, I think, um, a source of pride to say that I'm Chinese, and and to say kind of like what we were talking about in the very beginning, where you have examples like the Iraq War or the coups that the US does sometimes, where they'll say the US is the number one villain, and they'll start to be sympathetic to PRC positions and narratives, and they'll even support um, Taiwan being annexed by the PRC. And I think
Mhm.
some of these people, a lot of them have never lived in the PRC, and so it's easier for them to have a romanticized view of them. and
Hmm.
or
Yeah, yeah.
they haven't personally faced any persecution from them, and or they're personally doing okay financially or just in general. So they kind of like we are talking about before, they won't have much of a reason to oppose the PRC. Like
Mm.
sometimes, as an example, right, we have people like you and Han Yang who I would say just know better. But then
Mm.
I've met some Chinese people like there was somebody that I grew up with here. She was born here, never lived in mainland China, right?
Mm.
But her parents moved here. And so I think we were talking one time, and I could kind of tell that a lot of her ideas about Asia came from her parents, like just listening to what her parents have said.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think so when I brought up Taiwan once, she was like, "Oh, why would I go to Taiwan?" And then like kind of like it sounded like her parents told her that Taiwan is just really, really shitty and that it's a place that was taken from us and we need to take it back. And so yeah, there's also like this crowd of younger Chinese diaspora that I think also can have a romanticized view of the PRC.
But I personally, I think those people are like very few foreign-born, uh, like Chinese kids really, care about what their parents say. I mean, maybe they, normally I don't think they even have a lot of communications. A lot of families I know because, the parents are mostly prefer speaking Chinese and the children prefer speaking English. So they don't really have very deep communications. So this kind of a, intense influence, political influence from their parents may not be that common. Maybe it happens in some families, but I don't think it's a really like dominant phenomenon.
Yeah,
That's just
even if
my
it's
guess. I don't
not
have data,
coming,
but yeah.
yeah, even if it's not coming from their parents, like yeah, even if it's not coming from the parents, I think going back to what I was saying before, where the wanting to have some sympathy from where your family came from, I can
Hmm.
understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but then I think they may extend that a little too far sometimes into then maybe having a romanticized view. So like I know somebody else who was born and raised there, came here when he was 16, and then I think mostly stayed here. But because again, we live in an environment in the West where it's just very normal for everybody to have
Mm.
the freedom and right to criticize your own government, whether it's Canada, U.S., Australia, and so that's sort of very normal, very normalized. And then I basically I asked him once, "What do you think about Taiwan's independence?" Or what do you? Or I think the exact question was something like it was something in that vein, and then he was struggling to accept it, and you could kind of tell that I think it might be like a source of pride where if the PRC was able to take Taiwan, that would be like, oh, we are very strong, and I feel pride from that, and because that's where I came from, or that's where my family comes from, I need to be one with them. So
Yeah.
that can be a thing that happens
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes.
yeah, that sounds a little one step forward from romanticizing China. I mean, if you just romanticize China, that's easier to understand. But if they also care about Taiwan, that's yeah, it's not for me. It sounds a little hard to understand because
They're out
I
there.
thought they can hardly tell the difference. They don't even yeah, they hardly know what Taiwan is about. They don't really have this historical education about Taiwan. So yeah, it's a it's a little surprising to me
I
to
think
hear that. Yeah.
they'll because eventually they'll hear about Taiwan and then they'll do their own research in quotations, right? Do your own research, and then they'll it's sort of like confirmation bias, right? Like the US is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bad guy, and so the Taiwan was wrongfully taken from us, and so we need to take it back. And I think part of it is also like I don't know if it's envy, but it's like, oh, it's a little uncomfortable for them to see Taiwan being completely separate from the PRC and thriving. And they're like, that's not, that's no, I don't like that. We need to take you guys to so that we feel strong, you know. Like I see this a lot, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, it wouldn't be stronger if you can take back some Russian territories. That would be that would be even better flex, I think. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I feel like yeah, it's definitely not very logical. So yeah, I never had that kind of strong nationalist feeling. So I don't maybe I don't know, maybe when I was five or maybe, but I don't think I never had really strong. So I can never fully understand these people, but maybe I should because it's really a common phenomenon. So yeah, now you see all the Trump voters also have the similar like mentality. So yeah, something they want to belong to a group that can dominate other groups, even though they themselves don't really benefit from that, but maybe they want to have this psychological satisfaction from belonging to a dominant group. I don't know. Maybe it's
Yeah.
more common than I thought it was because yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it could be.
yeah.
Yeah, because I've encountered these like throughout my life being on the internet, like you see these comments all the time. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just sad. It's just sad. I mean, there could be a theory of, I mean, this will kind of maybe hurt their feelings a little bit, but if you may feel some inadequacies in your own life or insecurities in your own life, like sort of I can't the word is escaping me right now, but getting gratification from the PRC being able to take Taiwan and being able to get gratification by extension of that, compensating for like whatever
Mhm.
inadequacies in their personal life, it might make them feel like, hey, like I'm a part of that, and that's where I come from. That's where my family's from, and the Americans are horrible, and look at us. Sort of, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe it's a compensation mechanism. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know. I feel I have a lot of insecurity too. I mean, I mean, everyone has a lot of insecurity. I think it's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's because even if, let's say, even if China takes Taiwan, like, would they feel better about themselves? Maybe they would feel better for 5 minutes, but then the next day they'll still wake up to their work or to their, to whatever, trouble in their life. It's not doesn't really, give them any boost like in a real sense, right? So it's like it's like your yeah, maybe it's like your your soccer team won, right? So it's
yeah, I
yeah,
think
you
it's like
you you
that.
want it to happen, but then you feel happy for a day or two. Yeah, maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's the same mentality.
Yeah,
Because I don't really watch
yeah.
sports too. So I guess that's probably why. Because I don't watch sports, so maybe for people who watch sports, maybe they have a different understanding.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's a form of collectivism where
Mm,
yeah, the the it's kind of yeah, the accomplishments and failures and tragedies of this collective, and they feel it personally too. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier about why some Chinese people might hate Japan and Japanese people. They take that history personally, and they feel like they have to hate Japan and Japanese people. And if the collective narrative is Taiwan was wrongfully
mm,
taken from us and we need to take it, I
mm.
think yeah, it's a form of collectivism.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I don't want the video to be too long because sometimes when it's
Yeah,
too long, people may not have patience to watch. But I kind of feel there's another thing I want to I kind of feel there's another thing I want to talk about. So we talk about Taiwan, we talk about Piker, we talk about mm, oh, you asked me like what I felt bad, what motivated me to come out, or what I felt bad when I was in China. So I
mm,
think one thing I want to add, I talk about freedom of speech, I talk about other things, pollution and the corruption, things like that. But I think another thing is it's not entirely what. what my life is like. It's like what I see, what I observe other people's life. I feel like, you I feel like because there's this hukou system. I don't know if you've heard of hukou
Yeah.
system. So it's, yeah, for the people holding rural hukou, they're like, it's like a lifelong sentence to
Live there. Yeah.
poverty, right? So it's really hard for them to transfer their hukou to get public school enrollment in big cities. So they have to leave their children in the countryside while they find jobs in the cities. So their children receive very bad education and sometimes not protected by their parents. There may be other issues like sexual assault or something, other things might be going on. So yeah, so I kind of feel, but I had I had a urban hukou, so uh, I didn't really when I was younger, I didn't really realize it was an issue. But then when I met more people that are in a much worse position, I just feel like kind of guilty. I feel like kind of it's like I'm writing this system to have easy life because I took a college exam in Beijing. My scores weren't that my scores were okay, but it's not like super, but it's not like super high. I don't think I deserved Beijing University, but I still got in, right? Because
Mm.
it's just Hukou really helped you in a lot of different ways. So
Yeah. It's
so
really,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's it sounds like it kind of holds your own people back, right? Because it's not a meritocracy. If we like it just the university entrance example, like if you opened it up, like it doesn't matter what your hukou is, whoever gets the
yeah,
best scores goes here, then you really
yeah, yeah.
get to sort of take advantage of your human talent, right?
Yeah, and of course, even if you open it up, those who can get into better high schools are still have an advantage, right? Because some people, if you have a rural hukou, it's really hard to get into a good high school in the first place. So it's so it's not like my privilege disappeared by coming here because I coming here itself is already a privilege, right? So I understand that that doesn't make my privilege disappear, but at least I feel like from a normative perspective, I don't want to be associated with that system. I don't feel like that system is just. I don't feel like it's morally rewarding to me.
Mm.
Yeah, and of course, uh, after I came here, of course, I noticed a lot of problems in U.S. system as well. But at least it's at least I don't have the illusion that things is better on the other side. I don't have the illusion that you can magically become a super equal and enjoyable place just by adopting the Chinese system. That's yeah,
You're not there
unfortunately, that's what a
compulsive,
lot of
yeah.
people, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that kind of sound. I mean, obviously it's different, but there's some similarities with the Indian caste system where, you don't
yeah,
get to
yeah, yeah,
choose your parents, right? And you're
yeah,
kind of just
yeah,
born where you are,
yeah, yeah.
and like once you develop some kind of like consciousness and self-awareness, you're like, oh, okay, I guess this is my fate, sort of thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's
I
not
think it's
fair. It's not,
formally,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's formally India sort of denied, like they abolished caste system after independence, right? So
Hmm.
formally, I mean, informally, there's still discrimination, but formally, at least, there's a government assistance for formally lower caste, and there's like formally speaking, you can't be discriminated against, right? So
Hmm.
you can
Yeah.
move to whatever city you want, right? That's yeah, that's
Okay. So
so
that's already better. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like yeah, maybe yeah, I don't know, but maybe they still have a lot of struggles, of course, but at least you don't feel like you don't feel like you're a second class citizen, right? So that's yeah, I feel like it's more preferable than having a lifelong
Yeah.
label on you and your children, right? So even if your children is born in the city, that's the weirdest part, right? If I have rural hukou and my children is born in a big city, my children are still rural
Mm.
residents. Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's yeah.
yeah, it's a very very messed
That
up.
kind of
Yeah,
explains like sometimes there's there's a curse that you can like where yeah when you curse sometimes people sometimes say like oh I'm gonna curse the next 5 generations down your family right
Yeah,
that you can
yeah.
there's kind of
Yeah,
like you can kind of see that where there's just some systems that like get passed down even if it's like I don't know like the hukou system so
yeah, yeah.
I can see that so the last question that I would ask you would be if there was like a foreigner, like a non-Han person, like a white person or brown
Mm-hmm.
person, or whatever, and they asked you, "Hey, so you're Chinese. Why why don't you support the Chinese government? Why are you when it comes to like I guess Taiwan could be an example of like, oh, well, don't you think that Taiwan was wrongfully taken away from you? Like, why don't you support the Chinese government's positions? You're Chinese, so why don't you support China? Why don't you support the Chinese government? What would be your response to them?
Well, I would say you're white. Why don't you support the American government, right? Or
Yeah.
so it's yeah, and maybe you support the current American government, but I'm sure if you support the current American government, you probably didn't support the previous American government. So,
Yeah.
so it's yeah, it's just because we have one party system, so we have to always support it. That yeah, of course, it's yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of people like sometimes in my TikTok comments, some people say I was like a race traitor or something.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, so many white people are criticizing American government. Are they all race traitors? I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Yeah. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have this they have this painting on their truck of tying Joe Biden into a, like do you know that meme? Like they painted on the truck on their truck a tied up Joe Biden like
Oh, I didn't see
so
that. No.
it looks like yeah it looks like they put Biden in their trunk or something like that. So
Oh,
so so I mean are they race traitors? Not
yeah.
they're like yeah they're white nationalists. They're not race traitors. So
Yeah. Okay.
so yeah so how can you claim I'm a race traitor? I don't know what that means. So so yeah, but some people yeah feel like they think if you are yeah they have this double standard, right? If you are non-white, you sort of have to support your government, but yeah. By the way, are your parents like 本省人 外省人 like
So my both my parents are born and raised in Taiwan, but so three of my grandparents were also born and raised in Taiwan. My dad's the only one that was born and raised in Jiangsu,
okay?
so he would be the white child.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if you claim people should be loyal to their government, then what if some like some Taiwanese who was born in China, right? So which government should they be loyal to, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, you can't really just of course it's their choice, right? You can't just claim okay, just because I'm born there. You can totally be born somewhere and move to somewhere else. Then which government should you be loyal to? That doesn't make
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, your race shouldn't determine like what your political loyalties. It's a kind of it's a little racist to be honest. Like yeah, like white
Yeah,
people
yeah,
are
yeah.
only
It's
are the
yeah, I
only
think
ones
it's
that
kind
are
of
yeah.
racist. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the white people are the only ones that are allowed to like choose what government to criticize, and colored people of color have to support their whoever's that's yeah, just ridiculous. I mean, by extension, so out of the people that are living in mainland China, because we can never trust the polling. Like, what percent? Just I know we can never truly know, but just for just as a guess, what percent of the population do you think like supports the government, and what percent do you think doesn't?
I don't think that's possible to estimate because firstly, if you ask them, they won't tell you the truth, right? So yeah, and of course, different social class may have different, and also yeah, I think a lot of people don't really have that concept because they don't have the alternative, right? If I oppose the government, then what do I have in place, right? So they never really they don't know the alternative. They don't never
Yeah,
learn about the Western electoral system, like how the two-party system works, how the multi-party system works. So they don't have that concept, so they don't really know what it's like. I oppose the solar system, right? So there's no point because I don't know any alternative, right? For a lot of people, they don't really think that way, support or oppose. I don't think they are,
Mhm.
especially some less educated people or less they don't have time to think about it really. So li life is like a grind. So it's the rural residents, right? They basically they work, I don't know, like those people who deliver food, they work like 12, 13 hours a day. I mean, they don't have time to think about things like this. So
Right.
so I think that's definitely the majority. But among intellectuals, among educated people who actually, if you look at the Weibo, at least when I was in Weibo, I think, a majority was not happy about the government. You
Mm.
know, yeah, but these days it's different because they removed a lot of accounts, so you can't really tell. Yeah, but in early 2010s, there was a sort of a golden era of Weibo and a lot of different, uh, you know, voices, and then yeah, so that's
You
uh,
could actually
so
see
back
those comments, eh?
yeah back then I feel like if you post some like at least the more distant voice can have more reposts, like more likes, more views. Yeah, because yeah, maybe yeah, if you say something in support of the government, it just sounds kind of lame. Maybe it's
Mm.
because it's lame. I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know how. Maybe yeah, but I feel among people who are politically active, who are mentally politically active, that no one is actually politically active. No one really
Yeah.
does anything because it's impossible. But at least those who are mentally, actively
Yeah.
thinking about politics, I think a majority probably want something else. Probably, but that you can
Okay.
never know for sure. Yeah, so some organizations may conduct those surveys, like what percentage that no, those are useless really. Because who is gonna tell you the truth? Even if you ask me, if I'm in China and you ask me if I support the government, I would say yes. Why wouldn't I? So it's if I have to put something in writing, why would I risk my life to say something different? There's no yeah.
I think there was a poll where I think it was some like tanky account where they posted a poll, and the poll was I think it was conducted by Harvard or some organization but extended from Harvard, so that they're trying to use that as, hey, it's Harvard. They're obviously going to be objective, but I think they might have even hired like local pollsters or something. So even then, like you can never just trust like it's hard to trust a poll about the people
Yeah,
in
but
mainland.
even if like a white person comes up to you and asks you to fill a survey, you can't really say, okay, I'm sure he's not gonna report me to the
Report me
government.
or
How
yeah.
can you be sure? Yeah, yeah. So no one would like people are already accustomed to self-censorship. They're not gonna just help you with your research. Like why? Why
Yeah,
would they
they'd be
do that? Yeah.
skeptical, like, oh, why am I going to get in trouble? Like, they wouldn't want to risk that naturally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
yeah, so I think it's I don't know how to convey the truth here. Partly because I don't even know the truth because it's just everything is behind the closed doors. So so yeah, and of course even if I know, it's really hard to convey it because all the media is monopolized. It belongs to the state, and all the information is tightly controlled. So yeah, yeah, I don't know how to make people not believe Hasan Piker, but it's yeah, but I just want to give it a try. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective because it's it's kind of rare. I mean, like the amount of like mainland Chinese people who are willing to not just automatically have like this automatic loyalty to the PRC. There, that's already rare. Well, I don't know if I should say that that's rare, but it's even rare for one willing to be very public about that, being really public, being willing to be public about yeah being willing to criticize the PRC. So I think yeah, people like you and Han Yang are very valuable, especially because you guys were born and raised there. So you guys kind of have like somewhat of like insider information in a way because you've because I've never been to mainland China and I it's probably not safe for me to go right now. So so so
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
it's
also
really
a technical reason. So a lot of people who were born and raised there, they don't speak very good English. So partly because, it's just, yeah, it's the two languages are very different, right? So if you came here in your 20s, it's you can make normal communications, but if you want to really uh, convey
dive
really
deep.
complicated ideas, it's not
Yeah.
it's not that easy, right? So I was able to do it partly because I was in social science. I wrote a lot of papers, and also, my kids refuse to speak Chinese, so I have to speak English to them. So yeah, I learned a lot of English from my kids. Yeah, so
Oh, great.
it's really a lot of expressions. So yeah, so I think but for most people, it's kind of hard. If they were born there, if you want them to effectively convey their ideas in English, that can be a little hard. Yeah, so you don't see a lot of people like me, not because there aren't a lot of people like me. It's just because maybe it's hard for them to really communicate
Do it in
effectively
English.
in English. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why
yeah,
I think
yeah.
people like you are very valuable. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess I probably need to stop recording. If the file is too big, my computer
Okay.
may
Yeah.
be hard to handle. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I guess, let's just stay here, stop here. So I really not stay here,
Yep.
stop here. So yeah, I really appreciate like your input, yeah, and
No,
really
for sure.
good to talk to you. Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'll see you I don't know when, but sometime.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch. And yeah,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
always great to talk to you. And yeah, I actually recently came across a video. This is unrelated to what we were talking about, but there's this German girl that has been living in oh fuck, I think it's oh no, what was that recent it's South America? It's kind of a dictatorship now, but it's not Colombia. It's is it Ecuador? No, oh, it's escaping me right now. But she posted a video recently, and it's interesting. I'm not. I think you might disagree with some of it. I'll maybe just
Mm.
get your opinion on it later.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll keep
Let's
in
do
touch.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
Yeah. Yeah. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.